Hello everyone and welcome to Kantan Japanese. This will be my third lesson about verbs. In order to understand this lesson, you must watch the previous videos. Today's lesson will be about the past tense. I will only cover some information about the past tense, otherwise the video would be too long and I think it would bore you to death. So I will separate the past tense on a few videos. First, I will explain how to get the past tense for the first verb group in the formal speech. You will notice that it's always more or less the same pattern. So, first you take the dictionary form, then you remove the final and you replace it with imashita. For example, let's take this one. This is the kanji, this is the hiragana, and this is the romaji. So, this is omou. So you take the final and you replace it with imashita over here. So the final result is omoimashita, which means to think in the past, or thought. So this one is think, and this one would be thought in the formal speech. Now, as far as the past tense for the first group, when we're talking about the informal speech, things get a little bit dicey. It's a fair bit more complicated. The most important thing that you must keep in mind is you have to look at the last syllable of the dictionary form. This is very important. Okay, let us proceed. Now imagine that you have a verb, and it's a verb of the first group, and you look at the last syllable of the dictionary form, and it's s. So to get the past informal form, you will remove the s and you will replace it with shita. For example, take the verb kasu. This verb is part of the first group. It ends and the last syllable is s. So you remove the s and you replace it with shita. So you get kashita, which means to lend in the past and lend in the present. Okay, this time around you still have a verb of the first group and you still want the informal past form, but this time the last syllable of your dictionary form of your verb is gu instead of s, which was last time. So you remove gu and you replace it with ida. So you see, it's always about removing the ending and replacing with something else. For example, oyogu, which means to swim. You remove the gu and you replace it with ida. So you get oyoida, which means swam. And this one is swim in the present. Now I'm gonna go a little bit faster because it's pretty much always the same pattern. You just look at the last syllable and you change it with something else. So this time the last syllable of the dictionary form is ku. So you remove the ku and you replace it with ita. Just like, for example, kaku, which means to write. So you remove the ku and you replace it with ita. You get kaita, which means this is wrote in the past, and this kaku is in the... Okay, I know this might be getting a little bit tiresome, but we're almost done, so courage. Alright, so first group, informal, but this time with verbs ending with n, bu, or mu in their dictionary form. So, you replace these endings with nda. For example, nomu, which means to drink, becomes nomu. You replace the mu with nda, becomes nanda, so drank in the past. Asobu, which means to play. You remove the bu and you replace it with nda, so it becomes asonda, which means played in the past. And finally, sumu, which means to stay somewhere, to live somewhere, becomes sunda in the past. So you see, it's very simple. 3 different endings, but they are replaced by the same suffix. And this is the last one for the first group, informal past. Now, this one is for the verbs, the dictionary form of the verbs, which ends with u, tsu, or ru. So you remove the u, tsu, and ru depending on the verb and replace it with ta. For example, okay, so this one, uru, means sell. So remove the ru, this one, and replace it with ta. So it becomes utta, sold. This one, katsu, tsu over here. You remove the tsu and replace it with ta. It becomes katta, one. This one, sing. Tao, replace the u, and replace it with ta, becomes utata, sang. So it's a lot of things to remember, but it's very simple. Now let's talk about the past tense for the second group this time, the second verb group once again in the formal speech. Okay, so same thing as for the first group, you take the dictionary form, and this time you remove the final r and you replace it with mashita. Now pay attention, because for the second group you replace it with mashita, and for the first group it was imashita. So let's look at an example. Okay, taberu, which means to eat. So you remove the final r and you replace it with mashita. So it becomes tabemashita. So this means ate, and this one means eat. Let's move on to the informal form this time. So we're still in the second verb group, but this time it's the informal speech. Now it's the same thing like the previous times. You take the dictionary form, you remove the final r, just like last time. But this time, instead of replacing it with mashita, you replace it only with ta. For example, taberu, just like last time. So you remove the r and you replace it with ta. So it becomes tabeta, which means ate in the informal speech. Finally, I will talk about the third verb group. I will talk about both the formal and the informal speech in this slide, because there are only two verbs to remember. So, for the formal speech, kuru becomes kimashita and suru becomes shimashita. This is for the formal speech for the third verb group. And the informal speech, kuru becomes kita and suru becomes shita. Once again for the third verb group, informal speech. And finally, that's all for today. What you should learn in today's video is to conjugate the verbs in the past, both the formal and the informal speech. And this stands true for both three verb groups. So it's a lot of work. Actually, it's not so hard. You just have to memorize which ending requires which conjugation. So that's all for today. Have a good one.